Combating child exploitation, one stop at a time. Hello, how are y'all? My name is Prestridge. I'm a captain with the Texas Department of Public Safety, and I appreciate this opportunity to share information about a game-changing opportunity to protect children. The first half of my career I spent in the Texas Highway Patrol, stationed in a rural county on Interstate 10, which stretches from California to Florida. And during that time, I was trained in the skills of drug interdiction, a concept to combat drug trafficking through the recognition of indicators and conflicting statements. I then promoted and had the opportunity to work with troopers who were very proficient in drug interdiction. It was during that time I read an article about human trafficking. The victims were transported from South America to the Northeast, and in their statements they talked about traveling down Interstate 10, the same section of interstate we were responsible for patrolling and protecting. I began to wonder if we had ever contacted that vehicle or others like it, and if so, what questions should I have asked? Not having those answers, we began to look for training, and to our surprise, we found that none existed. So we took it upon ourselves to begin developing our own training. To do so, we had to educate ourselves in the various approaches to engaging with children, the various types of offenders and their behavioral patterns, and lots of statistics. For example, on average each year there's approximately 400,000 missing child reports across the country. And depending on the statistics you review, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually victimized before adulthood. Those numbers resonate with us as patrol officers because we come in contact with children on a daily basis through traffic stops, service calls, or simply grabbing a cup of coffee and having an opportunity to speak with children. And you can't talk about child victims without talking about those who offend against children. Most people are familiar with registered sex offenders. There's approximately 800,000 across the country, and nearly 50,000 of those offenders are non-compliant, many of whom have absconded, which means they're missing. They're literally state shopping, traveling from state to state and county to county, trying to gain consensual access to our children through jobs, hobbies, and activities. And then we looked at the resources. We learned that there's more than 800,000 officers across the country. So if you have a child, a grandchild, or a young loved one in your family, if that child were to go missing, how many of those officers would you want searching for your child? Inevitably, everyone says all 800,000. But that's not realistic. You see, very few agencies have one person fully dedicated to searching for those missing children, let alone an entire unit. Texas DPS has approached this through a force multiplier, playing on its strengths through its Highway Patrol uniformed officers. With assurance, we know that our officers are out there searching each day for those missing exploited children. When we began researching this in 2008, we reviewed statistics in Texas and DPS. For example, during that time, there were more than 57,000 missing child reports in Texas alone. The Texas Highway Patrol was responsible for conducting more than 2.8 million traffic stops that year, which resulted in the arrest of more than 12,000 wanted persons and the seizure of more than 69,000 pounds of marijuana and $16 million related to illegal activity. When we asked the key question, how many missing, exploited, or at-risk children had we rescued, we couldn't produce that number. And we learned that we're no different from other states. We knew our officers were out there contacting missing, runaway children. However, we learned it's not enough to just encounter these children. You must account for them each and every time. It's not about counting statistics. It's about having an understanding of where you begin as an agency to make improvements in protecting children. It also sends a message that this is a priority and therefore it's worth tracking. So we developed an approach called Interdiction for the Protection of Children, also referred to as IPC. You see, if you belong to a specialized unit of human trafficking, you know with assurance that if a file lands on your desk, you're probably working a human trafficking investigation. If you belong to an Internet Crimes Against Children unit and a file lands on your desk, you're probably going to be investigating an online solicitation case. However, patrol officers don't have that advantage. If they encounter a child, that child may have just run away 20 minutes earlier and hasn't been reported missing yet. Those are going to be different indicators and responses. Or that officer may have encountered a child who's been missing for 6 months, and on the child's phone is information related to a trafficker, and the adult may be a John who's tried to purchase the child. Again, different indicators and different responses. So we train officers in the different concepts of human trafficking, sexual assault, missing children, high-risk threats to children, and registered sex offender compliance. And what we've learned is that if a child is a victim of any of those components, they're at a high risk of also being victims of other crimes. So we use a holistic approach to protecting children, focusing on the various crimes and educating our patrol officers. In the 10 years of research and development, through trial and error, we've learned that there is no secret formula. Many of the indicators are common legal items that many people will see day to day. They can come in the version of a tattoo, whether on the victim or the suspect. They can be items used as gifts and lures, from money to toys and videos. And then there's legal pornography. Depending on the circumstances, the officer has to be able to interpret each one of those indicators and items. Those items found in a house will be interpreted differently than if found in a truck tractor, and then also in a motor vehicle. So since the training began, we've seen results in rescues and cases initiated in human trafficking, sexual assault, child pornography, and child abduction. Today, our Texas Highway Patrol troopers have rescued more than 300 children as a result of this approach. So what do you need to implement this program? When developing this approach, we wanted to make sure it could be implemented in any size agency, from the largest of agencies with thousands of officers to the more common rural agencies with just a few. So you don't need any new personnel. You don't need any new equipment. And it does have immediate use. And that's because of our victim-centered approach. So let's talk about the children. We'll begin with Elizabeth Smart and Sean Hornbeck. Both were victims of abduction. They went missing for long periods of time. And during that time, they had contact with the public and law enforcement. Those were missed opportunities to rescue those children. Unfortunately, we didn't have an understanding of why children may not call out for help. There's one message that we ask all officers to take from any of these trainings. So know this: stop waiting for children to ask for your help. Stop waiting for children to tell you that they're victims of abuse, neglect, and rape. To wait for a child places the burden on the child. It is our responsibility to ask questions and ensure the safety of each and every child we encounter. So stop waiting and get to work. Thank you.